So both Jim and Randy, I want to try to do this as quickly and briefly as we can, even though I know it's a lot of information to cover. Both of you feel free to express your thoughts on this, but let's talk a little bit about a question, Jim. I think you can cover this first, and then maybe Randy, remote work. So could providing a service address for my remote work location be construed as, quote, holding myself out in the jurisdiction where I'm not licensed? Attendee wanting your thoughts on that, Jim.
That's a great question.
We talked about holding yourself out, and there's no one definition of it. And we looked at that DC Court of Appeals UPL committee opinion or set of or guidance really that said if you're in DC and you're not licensed here, don't use a DC address on your business communications. Okay, but the service address thing, that's kind of adding a dimension of like, well, what if you have to? What if you're literally there and you literally have to accept service on behalf of a client? And so you have to put out there that that's where you are. I would say, and I would advise the client, that's not really the kind of using a DC address that I think the Court of Appeals would want you to avoid. I think there are obligations to the tribunal that you have in that instance to be correct about where you are, to let the court and the other side know where you are. I think those obligations probably override the concern about holding yourself out. I think you have to be clear with the court and the other party and whoever else in that case that you are not licensed in DC, which you can do on your pleadings just as well as you include a service address. And maybe that's the solution. Maybe that's just say, well, residents and at such and such in Washington, D.C., address for service only or something like that. Maybe that gets you around the problem. But I think providing the address that you must provide to the tribunal has to override the idea that you're holding yourself out, because you can always point out to a disciplinary agency or whoever's inquiring, that's not what I'm doing. I'm not telling anyone I'm licensed there. I'm saying that's my service address. That's the best I could come up with.
Thank
Randy,
you
what do you think?
so much. Yeah, Randy, your thoughts?
No, I agree with Jim there. I think I hate to add more technicalities to it, but you could always put address for service only. But the beauty is very few things have to be served in person anymore anyway. So
Sure.
You should be able to avoid that problem for anything other than, I don't know, TROs and subpoenas and things like that. I guess complaints, but if you're serving me with a complaint, I'm not going to tell you where I am.